It's a cliche to say the next speaker needs no introduction. And in Michael Phelps' case, that is only half true. We all know about the 28 Olympic medals, a record that may never be broken. But what makes him a champion is so much more than that. What makes him a champion in my book has been his willingness to share the story many didn't know about his greatest battles against anxiety, against depression, suicidal thoughts that he confronted at the height of his success. He didn't have to do that. He could have kept quiet after the storm passed. Instead, he's been raising consciousness among athletes and fans and waging war on the stigma that we've spoken about today. He's emboldened others to seek the help they need. Because of Michael Phelps, who we've all seen on victory stand after victory stand, can acknowledge his own mental health challenges, why can't you? Perhaps because he's known the prodigious heights and lows associated with the great athletic achievement. He's also counseled other athletes, including Tiger Woods and Grant Hackett, an Australian swimmer, and his fellow Olympian Allison Schmidt, who spoke here last year. Because of the power of their stories and their leadership, Michael and Allison were honorary chairs this year, or I guess last year, for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. They were presented there with special recognition awards for their support of children, youth, and young adults with mental health and substance abuse disorders. Today, we recognize Michael here for his leadership, his impact, and his courage to speak out. Yes.
All righty.
Michael, it's a measure of your commitment to this cause that you left Phoenix to be here in Chicago.
It's an eye-opening experience getting off a plane last night and seeing 14 degrees.
I think I speak for everybody in this room when I say I have never been on a Wheaties box. If I'm wrong, raise your hand. And I'm curious as to what it takes and what it was like to become Michael Phelps, the athletic champion.
I mean, I think that part is pretty easy. You know, it's hard work, dedication, not giving up, and really.
But what does that mean as a child? What does that mean?
I mean, for me as a kid growing up, I played lacrosse, baseball, soccer, and swam till the age of 11. My coach sat down with me at the age of 11 with my parents and said if I wanted to be an Olympian in 4 years, I could. So at that point, I said, okay, I'm going to forget all the other sports, and that sounds pretty cool. I want to be an Olympian. So
seems like a good thing.
Yeah, I was like, awesome, cool. I get to represent my country and have a chance to win a medal. I was like, yeah, this sounds amazing. So sure enough, 4 years later, I make my first Olympic team, and I wanted more. I was fifth in my first Olympics in Sydney in 2000, less than half a second away from a medal. I wanted to come home with hardware. That's why I was going. Like, you know, I wanted to bring a medal.
Not a wrench or a hammer, but
I didn't. Yeah, and I didn't
Right.
want a participation ribbon
Right.
or something like that. I wanted a real medal. So that just kind of motivated me for the next 6 months. I broke my first world record at 15, and I basically just used all of that to win my first gold medal in Athens in 2004, and I was always hungrier and hungrier, and I wanted more. And I wanted to push myself really to see what my max was. I was very fortunate to have an amazing coach and to be honest, the best support system I could ever ask for.
And what sacrifices did you have to make in the rest of your life for that? Because this must have involved an enormous amount of time.
I mean, I think, if I look at sacrifices that I made growing up as a kid, I didn't mind making the sacrifices because I had the opportunity to do something that nobody else had ever done before. And I think for me, that was just something that was exciting enough to, kind of miss on what the high school kids were doing at that age and what the college kids were doing at that age. And for me, I had bigger goals and dreams that I wanted to accomplish. So.
And you've talked about dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression. When did that become apparent to you? When did those struggles begin in your memory?
Yeah, I mean, for me, growing up, I had hard times in the family. Growing up with a single family household, my mother raised myself and my two sisters, and I think the first time I really saw something pop up was when I really started almost like acting out in a way, and there was a certain time really during every year that something would happen. So it was basically in the beginning of October, November-ish is when something kind of started going. I started going down and having a tough
Every
time.
year at that time?
It was basically from almost '04 for a while. Something was coming up where it just wasn't right. And for me, I would say '04 is probably the first depression spell I went through.
And you had a DUI that year?
Correct. I had a DUI in '04. And I can honestly say really after every Olympics, I think I fell into a major state of depression, and I think after 2012, that was probably the hardest fall for me. I didn't want to be in the sport anymore, and a year and a half, 2 years after that Olympics, I guess probably a year, I didn't want to be alive anymore. I think that's where I really hit my all-time low so far. Hopefully it's my all-time low. And I just never forget just being in my bedroom at home and literally sitting in there for 3 to 5 days and just not wanting to be alive.
And did you, during those years, you had that incident in 2004 and 2009. You were photographed
Yep.
with a bong. In 2014, you had the DUI, and at that point, you sought treatment. Were you able to talk to anybody during those years that you were struggling with this? Because that's a long time. That's a 10-year period.
Yeah. I think for me, I was very good at compartmentalizing things and stuffing things away that I didn't want to talk about, I didn't want to deal with, I didn't want to bring up. Like, I just never ever wanted to see those things. And after a while, I'd have a kind of a blow up, I guess you could say, or an explosion where I would just have like a breakdown. And I think at that point is where I really sat down and I was like, I need some kind of help. I have to figure out what is going on. And I was somebody who was, I guess I could call myself stubborn by never asking for help.
Interestingly, I read somewhere that when you were in school, you were diagnosed as ADHD,
Yeah.
and you were prescribed Ritalin,
Yep.
and you at some point said, I don't want to do this because I don't want the nurse coming in and telling me to take my meds. Was it that you were embarrassed that was, or did you not want to acknowledge that you had any sort of vulnerability?
I think the biggest thing was, I didn't want to go to the nurse's office. I didn't want to do that in the middle of class or during lunchtime or, I don't know if it was not wanting to feel like different or, I wanted to be more normal or whatever it might be. But I basically said to my mom, I was like, can I pull myself off of this and try to learn things my own way? For me, I was very lucky and fortunate to find swimming as kind of a very peaceful place for me. I get to stick my head in water and scream if I want, and nobody's around. So it was kind of very relaxing and very peaceful for me. So, my mom kind of gave me, a couple tests, and she was like, let's see what happens if I pull you off, if we pull you off Ritalin and see how you can adapt.
She was an educator, is that right?
She was,
Yeah.
yes, she still is. So I just asked if I could get pulled off of it, and Sure enough, I was able to focus more with swimming, and that kind of transitioned to help me focusing really in everything that I did.
Yeah, but the reason I ask you that is it also, there may be a negative lesson in that, which is that you can overcome any problem through sheer force of will. And that's not really true.
It's, I think, sitting here today and everything that we all know about mental health, there is a massive stigma around it. And I think that's something that we still deal with every day. And if you look at really in my opinion, the last year or so, I think people actually finally understand that it is real. And this is a real problem. And we all can change together. And I think, finally people are aware of everything that's going on and people are talking about it. And, I think this is the only way that we can change.
Do you, in your own sort of raising of consciousness in yourself, was it in 2014 that you realized that not only that you needed help, but that it was okay to get it, and that?
Yeah, and I think once I reached out and asked for help and kind of learned more about who I was as a person, I'll never forget looking back and looking back today and saying to myself, this is in 14, I said, I'm going to show who I really am. Because I don't know if the world really ever saw who I truly am as a human being. I think the world saw me as a swimmer, and that was it. And that's how I looked at myself. I didn't look at I didn't look at myself as a normal human being. I looked at myself as this kid who was really good at swimming, and that was really it.
Right. Well, that's why I asked you. It feels like you almost have to subjugate the rest of your life to being the best. And therefore, you don't really cultivate the rest of your life or get in touch with the rest of your life. So that is a sacrifice that you have to make.
I guess. I was so engulfed in everything really that I was doing in the pool, and kind of, I guess that would be probably the biggest sacrifice I made. But, I think for me, I'm fortunate to be able to have that opportunity where I almost had that awakening where I had the opportunity to seek help. And I got to the point in my life where I was ready to ask for help. And I think I was just fed up with everything that I was compartmentalizing, and I wanted to get all of it out into the open. And I was talking earlier, there was the one time where I really broke down and opened up was not even planned. I was sitting down with a reporter from SI, Tim Layden, and it was like a lead-up story into Rio, preparing for the Olympics. And for some strange reason that morning, I just let it all open and let it all out. And you know what, to be honest...
With a reporter.
With a reporter. And to be honest, that day was, honestly, after that day, it's probably been some of the most enjoyable living that I've ever had the opportunity to experience.
Yeah.
Kind of understanding that it's okay to not be okay. Having that understanding. And I talked to Allison. Allison lives with us. She's like our daughter. So, but we talk about stories that we hear when we are traveling. And I'll never forget, Allison came home one day from a trip, and she said, a woman came up to me and thanked me for sharing my story because it helped save her child. And I said, and what was your response? She goes, I just started crying. And I was like, that's the impact. And I was like, and those moments and those feelings and those emotions for me are light years better than ever winning an Olympic gold medal. You have the chance to save a life, and that's way more powerful.
What kind of interactions have you had with people? How do people react to you when you tell your story? Have you had people come up and share their own stories in that same way?
Without question. And I think it's like, I guess I see athletes or celebrities, or you see, and I guess people think that they're so much different than everybody else. But I've gone through the same struggles that probably people in this room have gone through, or people all over the world have gone through. And that makes us human beings. That makes us just real, right? So for me, sharing these stories and having people come up, it's almost like I have obviously a better connection, but it's like I feel more human, and I think that's something that I love the most.
Well, I would think that, I mean, you were such and are such an athletic icon. And the thing about icons is that people want to project on them all the qualities of perfection, all of their idealized qualities. That's an enormous burden to bear.
Well, nobody's perfect, and you know, I guess I carried it for a long time, and you know, like I said, was fed up with it, and just basically said I need to change this, and I need to figure out what I can do to improve myself and to try to help people. You know, that's the biggest thing, and you know, honestly, I think it's one thing that I really enjoyed, and I hated it when I first went through it. When I was in treatment the first morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning, this nurse wakes me up and she's like, all right, look at the wall and tell me how you feel. And on the wall, there's 8 basic emotions. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. You just, like, I just got out of bed.
Was sleepy one of the images?
No. I was like, how do you think I feel right now? It's like, I'm pretty ticked off. Like, I'm not happy. I'm not a morning person. But I think that, you know, thinking about the 8 basic emotions and kind of understanding why you feel certain things in certain ways, I think has really been able to help me, and that's something that we've since implemented into my foundation and working with Boys and Girls Club. Just understanding why you're feeling upset or angry or any of those emotions and talking about it. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Once I opened up and really started talking about certain feelings and things that I had going on with myself, life became easy. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's like, I've said to myself so many times, I'm like, why didn't I just do this 10 years ago? But I wasn't ready.
10 years ago was 10 years before you sought treatment, was that first DUI I mentioned. And I read somewhere that your answer was, I feel bad that I've let everyone down. Would you react the same way today?
I mean, I let myself down really more than anything else. And you know, I think that moment, I'll never forget that moment and that moment that I spent with my mother. And you know, everything that I went through was a learning experience. And I can tell you, would I change anything that happened in my life? And I would say, not a shot. Because it's made me who I am today. For so long, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and like who I saw. And smile and be happy. And to this day, I'm very fortunate to have a family. I have one son, I have another child on the way, and life could not be better.
Yeah. I want to finish on that, but because I want to ask you about your son and your future child, or your child who will be with you soon. But I'm wondering about the drinking and whatever else you were doing, and how much of that was a way of self-medicating, of dealing with a pain?
Yeah, I mean, it was just running. It's basically me just running from whatever it was I was trying to run from, and at that point I didn't know. So it would be me just self-medicating myself basically daily to try to fix whatever it was that I was trying to run from. And you know, at that point, I just saw myself going deeper and deeper down that spiral staircase. And it led me to that point that was the darkest moment of my life. And you know, looking back at it, it's crazy. You know, it's honestly so bizarre that it's so night and day compared to where we are today and where I am today. And you know, for me, I'm extremely thankful that I did not take my life.
How close did you come? I mean, how seriously did you consider?
I mean, you know, I think for me, honestly, sitting in that bedroom for 3 to 5 days, I didn't eat, I didn't really sleep, I didn't talk to anybody. I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And you know, I think that's basically really as far as I got. I had no real plan of what I would do. But honestly, I think I really just thought it would be the easiest way, just to run. And you know, looking back at that now, it's honestly kind of like the most coward way to run is to commit suicide and not face the problems that I had. And you know, for me, that is something that I'm very blessed to be able to learn and experience now, and hopefully have the opportunity to pass it along to other people who are having those hard times, who do contemplate suicide. You know, I think that's the reason why, you know, suicide rates are going up, is because people are afraid to talk and open up. And look, I remember going to treatment my very first day. I was shaking because I was nervous of the change that was about to occur.
We should point out you submitted yourself to the treatment, but you also had to do it, right? Weren't there?
No, I did it just because I wanted to see what was going on for me, and I wanted to get help. And you know, I think it was something that, you know, I can look back on and I can smile about, because I put myself in an uncomfortable situation that I'd never been in before, and I got better, and I was able to get help. And, you know, honestly now, I'm not afraid to ask for help. You know, I think for a long time I carried kind of this, like, I don't know if it was abandonment from childhood and growing up, and I didn't want rejection, and I carried all of these emotions on for so long. But I think the biggest thing, like one of the biggest things now, it's like, I'll ask a question. If somebody says no, okay. You know, like, if they can't help me, okay, great. Or if they can't answer the question, great, no problem. Like, I don't take any hard feelings to it. And I think that was something that I did so much growing up as a kid and as a young adult. And, you know, now I've kind of understood all of that, and I've learned so much through this process. You know, and I can't say it enough. I want to help as many people as I can. And I love when people come up and share stories, and that's something that's just a treat.
What is your message to or what will be your message when they're prepared to accept it, to your children? And how did this whole experience affect you as a parent?
I mean, for me, number one, as a parent, it's made me 10 times stronger, and you know, I've learned so much about children and patience with children. I think that's one very challenging thing that my wife and I have learned together. And you know, honestly, when Boomer is old enough, I'm looking forward to sharing the experiences that I've had, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, it's made me who I am today, and I'm not ashamed of that. And the same goes for our future child. We have about 3 to 6 weeks before Nicole goes in to deliver our second child. And it's just going to be, honestly, like, this is a journey and a road that we're both so excited and looking forward to just having these moments with our family.
Well, let me just say, and I think everybody here would agree, that those children will be blessed for the wisdom that you've acquired through your journey, and their lives will be better for it. So thank you for sharing your story with us
No
today.
worries. Thank you.